Derek to my left-hand side, Martin to my right. It was nice of Bishopscourt to invite the three fastest drivers here today to talk for you all. First and foremost, Martin, you were in race control today. How did you get on?
It was grand. Somewhat different to stewarding at Goodwood, where you're constantly busy the whole time. I think we had one sort of major issue to deal with today, and on that I just sort of played cards.
I'm sure the rest of the lads will definitely agree that that's what you were doing, but you've done this at, now we hate to say it, but a bigger level than Bishopscourt with the FIA at Formula 1. Is it the same thing as here, just on a higher scale, or is there any differences?
I would say that the victims we had in the office today were a lot more mature, whereas when I did Hamilton and Rosberg at Barcelona, when they took each other off turn 3, lap 1, the F and the Jeff and the I'm speaking first, you shut up, and it was like listening to a kindergarten. Oh my God. And that was a shocker for me. And but today these guys were very mature, and I hope that can carry on tomorrow.
So 10 years ago this weekend you were dealing with Hamilton and Rosberg, and 10 years later you'll probably have to deal with two from Formula V. Derek, have you had a good day today so far in Bishopscourt?
Good day so far. I was in Bishopscourt one time before this. It was 1973. I towed David Kennedy's Formula Ford up here. I don't remember the track as it is now, but I think it was the old airfield back in those days. But it's great to see so many people here. You know, it's not exactly a summer sunny day, but it's great to see the heart and soul of motor racing, particularly in the north of Ireland, is alive and well. I love the sound of the strikers. What engine is in that thing, in a striker? Is it the motorcycle engine?
Someone with more knowledge than me might be able to give you a little bit more.
I just love to hear that.
Beautiful.
I saw the 250 kart race, amazingly fast, but all in all, it's a 3-hour drive from Dublin, and I enjoyed the trip, and I enjoyed being here.
Yeah, you mentioned Formula Ford, of course. You boat raced Formula Ford, boat raced Crosley's. Have you fond memories of your Formula Ford days?
I have fond memories, and I have terrible memories. But we went through a great era in the 70s because Formula Ford was the place to race. Ireland had really a wealth of competitive drivers who had a chance to make a career. And so I was lucky to be part of that era. I'm sorry to see Formula Ford is not as strong in Ireland as it was back in our day, because it was such an amazing training ground for me, for Martin, for lots of other guys who went on to become professionals.
Yeah, you mentioned Formula Ford in Ireland now. The gentleman to my right hand side, of course, will forever live in Formula Ford in Ireland. Your family having the Martin Donnelly Trophy in Kirkeston. It took place a few weekends ago.
We got 2 this year. We got 2 Martin Donnelly trophies, because the last one of last year was rained off, so we had that one. Oh, I don't know, about end of March time. It was a good event, well turned out. And then we have this year's one in September. But I mean, I think what Daly was saying there, Formula Ford has now been sort of pushed aside, mainly because of this token package that they brought out in the mid-early 90s, so that they had these corporate events like Renault, Nissan, Vauxhall. So what they did to give their guests and sponsors something else to watch was they made up from the Vauxhall and from the Renault. And then all those things with bigger money, which Ford didn't put into Ford, got pushed that back. And it's good to see that the historic side of Formula Ford, even a guy called Rick Morris, who's now I think 70, who raced against Senna and the likes of back in the day. Not perhaps Derek, there's a bit sort of a decade before that. It's still going strong, and we still have good events. The World Race Trophy is now on 170 cars, and the Formula Festival is still as prestigious to win today as it was back in the day.
Yeah, the water.
And by the way, I won it back in the day.
don't worry, folks, we're going to put the two of them up against each other a little bit later on. But the Walter Hayes and Formula Ford Festival, of course, I'm not sure if any of the Irish guys are in the room, but was dominated really by Irish drivers last year, which is great to see. What we've just been handed in front of us.
Excuse me. Not too long ago, it was dominated by American drivers, and my son won the Walter Hayes Trophy. Thank you. He's Irish American.
I'm actually surprised, Derek, you don't have a phone on the table, because your son is qualifying for one of the biggest races in the world currently.
Yeah, Indy 500 qualifying is today. It was rained out this morning, the practice session, so they're going to go straight to the 4-lap qualifying runs. I'm trying to keep up with it, but in this bomb shelter bunker here, it's hard to get the information, but we will be watching later on to see how it all goes there.
Myself and this gentleman with the moustache in front of me were both trying to beat Connor's best laps on the sim during the week, so we'll see how he gets on. What we've been handed is an old track map of Bishopscourt. Is that similar to what you remember, Derek?
Yes, in fact, I can see David Kennedy's skid marks all over the pit entry here.
So, in case you haven't heard over the last few weeks, Derek wrote a book and is selling a book. One fascinating story I find is how you funded your early racing career. Do you mind telling the folks a little bit about that?
And so, just like today, whenever you go and try and make a career, you have to find a way to get yourself into a car, whether you have to buy it or use somebody else's. Myself and David Kennedy had a novel idea that we could become labourers in either the Keystone oil pipeline that was starting in Alaska or the Australian iron ore mines. To go to Alaska, which was an option, they charged each employee £1,000 for the clothing you had to wear to stay warm enough and you didn't die. In Australia, all you needed was the scissors to cut the legs off your pants and the sleeves off your shirt, and you were well dressed. That was the deciding factor for us. We didn't have to buy clothes, cut the legs and the sleeves off, and we ended up in Australia for 6 months and made £5,000. Now that doesn't sound a lot of money now, but £5,000 back in that day, you could buy a competitive Formula Ford for just over £1,000. So you still had another $4,000 to pay your expenses to get a season's racing under your belt. And it was a novel idea, but it worked. To think that two fellas sitting in a car park in Dublin trying to decide how would we make a chunk of money to go that route and end up in Formula One. And it's all documented, obviously, in the book. And we just had 2 reviews done by British magazines. One said, frighteningly frank, what was it? Authentic. Amazing that the detail is as much as it is. And then the Motorsport magazine said they just couldn't put it down. And so that was one of the interesting aspects of the book. And I wrote it myself. Now, do they know that your story is coming on? Okay. So we don't know that yet. I won't tell you that yet. Anyway, whenever you have, there's either an autobiography where you write it yourself, or a biography where you have a ghostwriter. I did not use a ghostwriter. I did it myself. It took 3 years to actually write it. The reason I did it myself is I have an uncanny recall ability. I can see incidents that fascinated me or captured my interest in HD detail in my mind, and I didn't want to have the frustration of dealing with a ghostwriter, trying to get him to understand the emotion of the moment, the color of the moment, what I could see in my mind, so I elected to just do it all myself. And the upshot of that is that Maurice Hamilton, anybody here familiar with Maurice Hamilton, the journalist, Formula One journalist from the north here? I mean, maybe the best known guy still in Formula One today. I sent him the manuscript, and he said, Derek, he said, I never knew this, and he said, this is amazing stuff. You have to try and find a publisher and print this. And then he wrote the foreword for the book. And part of the foreword was the graphic detail that a racing driver was able to write, because I was there for the incident, and for whatever happened. But he was surprised that I had such a recall that I could write in such detail. And he said that, for him, made it a page turner. He said many times I started to read it, I was busy doing other things, but I found myself just turning the page, go to the next piece. And, you know, it was a kick for me, because, I mean, I've written a couple of books, mainly the driver's skills needed to develop world-class drivers, and some business books. But this was the first time that you get to expose yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I've made all the mistakes you can possibly make in life, in racing, and it was important to have those in there. And when I began to document all these activities, and there were certain big crashes, I mean, I should have been killed 3 or 4 times, but when you realize you survive time and time again, and life is full of challenges, the name of the book is Serial Survivor. It grew organically as the book was put together. And Brian was my wingman on this, because I'm a color guy, but I'm not a detail guy. So details, facts, figures, names, I leaned on Brian to make sure it was accurate. And then I added the color of the stories, and it's ended up just having great reviews. And so I'd love to, you know, hope something, you know, through the room here we'll spread a few. I wish they were all here now, but it's been a blast to do it. And Martin is just about to go on this same journey.
Yeah, you mentioned Brian, of course. People will know Brian from the Leinster Trophy history, so he's certainly a details man, maybe more so than myself or yourself. But you've both raced Formula Fords. You've wrote a book, Derek. You're writing one, Martin. One thing you've both done in this room that none of else of us have done is you have driven a Formula 1 car. Martin, what does that feel like?
How do you put that in words?
It depends what day, right?
It depends what day. No, it's just a very unique and a very gifted experience that you can't really put into words, especially you're on top of it, or you're in the car and you push the car. And back in my day, we had qualifying tires that were like super glue and qualifying fuel and engines. And we were testing one day at Silverstone, the old Silverstone. You come down the comps, you take that, you're pushing the 6th gear, harden the brakes, down the 5th and the 4th, back in the gas, sliding out to the big tall exit curve, the cure oversteer, 5th gear of the exit curve up to Magnus Beckett's. You come in and they do a pump out, put the fuel in, you make a few miles to compensate for the extra grip you in the rear to the fronts, and you go out and you have 1 lap to warm the tires up, and you come down the same corner and it's harden the brakes, 5th gear flat, all right? And you have to have an inner belief and confidence. You know that the car can do this. It's not the same car you had before. It's like almost like a different girlfriend who does different things. And you're going to learn that. You boys here know what I mean, all right? And you think, fake, I should have gone that a bit quicker. And it's a whole unique experience. And it's a very, what's we're looking for, a very, you know, there's 20, well, back in my day, there was 24, 26 drivers. And once you get to that, and once you sign for a team as prestigious as Lotus, and the heritage they've had before in the past, obviously with Jimmy Clark, with Evan Fittipaldi, Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, you know, the list goes on. You've entered a very unique club, and I had a very obviously competitive teammate in Derek Warwick, who had signed a contract with Lewis before, and then Senna came in, and Senna didn't want him there. He was too competitive, pushed him out. So when you get Warwick in there as your teammate, you're gauged in F1 to your teammate because they're the same cars, same equipment, and that gives you more determination. You know, and I did 12 Grand Prix, and I was getting quicker and quicker behind the steering wheel, whereby in the morning of my accident, I had 4 contracts for F1, so I wasn't worried if those took up the option or not, because I knew that for 91, 92, I'd be done. So it is a privileged part of life, and when you're there, you know, it's a unique experience. Guys, they've won done the price for a litre of milk, price for fuel, price for stamp, because You don't do that. Do you? Other people do it for you.
Yeah, you mentioned there about the contracts and sort of the epiphany of becoming a Formula One driver. After the accident, was it the total opposite of that, where it was, okay, I'm no longer a Formula One driver, I don't get to do this anymore? Or were you very reflective of your time doing what is arguably one of the greatest things in the world?
Well, I'm actually trying to move on from that.
They made a movie about it, I have to ask, unfortunately.
Just won't let it go. Well, let me insist, all right? Back on 35 years ago, an A-list actor called Brad Pitt was going to play my part in a movie. I would do my best to get it patented to make even more money. And I worked with a guy for 2 years, lovely guy. He had his demons in the past through his different marriages, but he's got himself squared up now. And he has a natural ability for speed. He has bikes, which he does track day stuff with. So you learn about breaking points and turning points and apexes. So he's quite handy and quite quick. And that major part of that film, apart from the start where they had the Porsches, was fun in my life. And I hope you've all seen the movie.
So, just on the movie, how did they approach you for that?
I had a phone call Saturday night. I got home and just you kicked your shoes off. You'd done hard week, and phone went. It said withheld number. Now, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, here's these trying to sell me some bifold doors or whatever else you're going to take. I went, hello, who's this? He says, I said, I don't want to buy anything. I'm on my glass wine, and the wife's watching that on deck. What? And he said, no, he says, it's Lewis. I said, Lewis who? He said, Lewis Hamilton. Well, I had to eat the biggest humble pie. I said,
did he try to sell you any doors?
I said, Lewis, it's not often my phone takes calls from a 7-time world champion. And we're going to do a bit of dialogue, and I'm thinking Eddie Jordan in my head. Marty, how are you going to fleece this? Get the money. And also really listened to what he said. I was thinking, right, how to get this? And I said to Lewis, I said, Lewis, I expect there'll be a certain amount of remuneration in this deal. And he said, I'll get my people to call your people within a week. I was talking to Joseph Kowalski and Brad, what they expect, what they wanted, and we signed a contract within a month. Deal done.
So you were cold called by a 7-time world champion?
Yeah. It's incredulous, I know, but Anne Beckman very happy about it. But he was there. His company was the producer of the do it around Gerd Berger, who had the fiery accident at Imola. But Lewis said to Joseph, have you seen the Senna documentary? And he's seen my accident there, and that convinced him to. That's what they're going to do.
Can I add a little piece?
What is it?
So, part of how Martin got paid was he was the director of certain scenes. And so he was going to tell them when they got the scene correct. And he got paid every time the scene was reshot. So they did it the first time, and he said, no, you got to do it this way. They do it that way. Still not right. And he was up at that 15 times he got paid for the same shit that they did right the first time.
And then we had the Saiga strike, right? So they made these mannequins that got fired into the air and got dragged along by a cord, rope. And I said, look, I got the pictures. I'm actually rolling, so that's not right. You have to learn to get this thing to move. So strike happens, Saiga strike happens. Even Brad Pitt couldn't come to Silverstone because that was a movie set. So we go to Brands Hatch 8 months later on, and all the bags and sponsors pulled out of the first one. So anything they canned, they couldn't use. So new crew, 350 million to use as a budget. Mike fee obviously went up for that one. I don't understand that. Eddie Jordan would be very, very proud. And we went to Brands Hatch. They had made this robotic mannequin, with my overalls were selling the sponsors in there. And they fired this thing out of a cannon. The first time I went, no. Said, you got it to roll another 15 times, and that was it. So I went to the premiere expecting to see that this mannequin can faked up in the air. And they went to the actual accident, used AI to put Brad's colour of his helmet, which was blue and white, onto my orange and blue helmet. And that's what it was. So everything we did was left on the cutting room floor.
But you got paid.
I made sure I got paid.
Folks, the lesson you've learned here is you've got to be savvy at making money if you want to be a Formula 1 driver.
6 red carpet appearances as well.
Derek, any movies coming about Monaco 82?
No, but I was involved in Sylvester Stallone's movie called Driven. Anybody see that movie, Driven, about IndyCar?
Yeah.
So his movie initially was to be about Formula One. We had a racing school in Las Vegas at the time. Stallone was in my office on the phone to the lawyers for Bernie Ecclestone, shouting and screaming, and they couldn't come to an agreement, so it became an IndyCar movie. And of course, he's a boxer, so Rocky and all those movies, he knows how to play that part. Well, to be a racing driver, he wanted to be in the car at speed. So I was his personal coach for 6 days. He might have been the worst student we ever had come through our program because he forgot everything. But he was a $50 million a movie guy at the time. And so all he wanted was enough of a feel that he could translate to whatever lines he was going to deliver. All I know is that movie did 49 million in the first 2 weekends and then died off. But the Brad Pitt movie has done 640 million so far today, which is, remarkable numbers.
I think it paid for your 15 takes, to be fair. What sort of advice do you give to a Hollywood movie star on how to drive a race car? Are you telling them sort of what you would tell one of your racing students? Are you going real basic? Because I imagine they get in not having a clue.
So, it's a very dangerous thing to do, to try and pull a Hollywood guy into a fast racing car. The Stallone program originally was to go from basic school training that we were going to give him. He was going to drive the Sauber at Monza. We took him up to a Formula Atlantic car, which is a pretty potent car for somebody who's not used to a racing car, knowing that if he went to Monza, he could get in trouble very, very quickly. So you want them to succeed, but we know how difficult it is, and so you got to be really careful in the type of confidence that you give them, because you're literally condoning them getting into something that could kill them. And that's what makes it so difficult when you do a racing movie.
Yeah, and you mentioned Driven, of course, IndyCar. You raced IndyCar broadcaster. Your son is qualifying for the Indy 500. I believe your niece is an engineer in IndyCar?
Nikki Daly, yeah, who was a hockey player for Ireland. Then she did a master's in motorsports engineering and is now a data engineer.
Is it safe to say you maybe enjoyed your time in America more than Formula 1?
Easy.
Well, so I've seen a lot of biographies and autobiographies by Formula One drivers, and they're great stories. And they start off how it happened, all the early days, Formula One, what was it like, great stories, and boom, then the book stops. My Formula One career was a chapter in the book, because I got pushed out of Formula One at the end of '82, and I got divorced at the time. Life was a bit upside down. I'd always liked America from the time I began to go there to Long Beach and to Hesketh in 1978, and I got intrigued by an Indy car. Now, I drove an Indy car in Phoenix. 0 to 100 miles an hour, a Formula One car is faster. 100 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour, an Indy car was much faster than a Formula One car. So I had an intrigue about the Indy 500. I thought, I'd like to go and do that, because I did Monaco, Le Mans was on the radar, and I thought the Indy 500. I only went to 1983 just for curiosity, and I never left. America opened up a whole new world for me. IndyCar racing, I was all but killed in 1984. That, believe it or not, opened up a television broadcasting world for me. So I had a completely different career in IndyCar, led to another interesting career in television broadcasting, which in turn gave me enough recognition in America to do corporate keynote speaking, which I do today. I was doing 25 or 30 of them at one stage. I don't want to travel that much anymore. Now I do about 8 or 10. But I love to think that I could share the high performance principles of our sport. I could use those high performance principles to influence corporate America. And I just love to think that after all these years and all I've been through, that I can still be completely immersed in our sport and potentially affect corporations and impress them.
Yeah, a lot of IndyCar fans sort of from that era say that, they love Bob Varsha and yourself on commentary. You had a couple of run-ins with Paul Tracy, stuff like that. I take it you do, but do you have fond memories of your life as a broadcaster at the track rather than a driver? Or was being a driver always the number one?
Well, yes, it was until I became a broadcaster. So I retired in 1992. I never missed a racing car for a day after I stepped out of it. And after I got hurt in 84, it was 11 years from 79 to 91 to 90 that I won an international race, European Formula 2 Championship, Sebring 12-hour race in Florida, which is a pretty big endurance race in America. It took me so long to get back to full-time racing, and then the struggle to become a winner again. As soon as I won the Sebring 12-hour race, on the podium that night, my wife at that time said, "Isn't it great that you won?" And I said, "Who really cares?" And I knew that was the beginning of the end. The struggle to get back to winning and be on the podium and celebrate. Having got there, the buzz wasn't the same. I knew that was the beginning of the end of my career. I did one more season in sports car racing. I was with Nissan in America with Jeff Brabham as my teammate. We were the best team in America. We won races on a regular basis. I told my team manager midway through 81, I'm going to retire at the end of the year, so plan on replacing me. He came to me towards the end of the year. He said, "Do you realize," because I won the Sebring 12-hour race again in 91. He said, "Do you realize nobody has won the Sebring 12-hour race 3 times in their only 3 starts?" He said, "Why don't you stay on and do the Daytona 24-hour race, the Sebring 12-hour race, and then stop," which is what I did. And at that stage, I was well entrenched in television broadcasting, so that was a whole new adrenaline rush for me, and I loved every minute of that. I never missed a racing car for a day.
What do you both make of, let's say, Formula 1 drivers nowadays who are not enjoying their craft, they don't like the new regulations? Do you think they should take the approach you took, Derek, in terms of once you're done, you're done? Or do you think, Martin, they should keep going until they maybe get the love back?
It's not the drivers have learned to go slower. It's inbuilt in drivers to drive a car to its maximum. I mean, we don't have blood in our veins. We've got testosterone in our blood that keeps us going. It's the FIA that have made a banjacks of the regulations. And they've now had this 5-week gap. And now they've now admitted and realised that they've got it wrong. And they're now starting to put things together with the electric charge and the recharge of the cars, which caused the accident that we had at Suzuka with the Haas driver Berman. So that was a coggle for them, but they should be now getting, if you noticed the last race, Aston Martin were able to do both races, so they're now starting to come to the party, but they realise now they're so far off the pace, there's no point in spending money to find 2 tenths, 3 tenths, because it still won't affect them getting over the back of the grid. So they've now decided they're not going to do anything with the cars for the next 4 races until they find something quite substantial that's going to put them mid-grid. But I do know if we're all still alive in 2031, that they're going back to Fiat engines for the noise. Everybody loves the noise back in the day with a small turbocharge. And we're now using sustainable fuels, so we're not polluting the atmosphere. So that's the next thing that the FIA and F1 team owners and manufacturers are working towards. V8s are quite cheap, a lot cheaper than what we're actually producing today. They're running V12s. And that'll be the next best stage. But up until then, I think we've basically got to suck it and see.
You've, of course, been back in a Formula 1 car recently.
I have.
Adelaide. How was that?
It was so many questions in my head, because I was 25 when I was in F1, and I young lad, had a lot of what I call deja vu. Ever experienced deja vu in your life? I had a lot of that. Every time I thought, I've been here before. And dreams and all the rest of it. Since I had my accident, I don't have any dreams, no deja vu. So I go to bed at night time, lights off, lights on. It's a flat line. I don't know whether I die again and then waking up. So that's unusual. What was your question?
Did you enjoy it? Which I think you might have.
Adelaide, yes, it was good. They had a street party in Adelaide, downtown Adelaide, where the guys would drive the cars through the streets down to this street with all these cafes and bars and stuff. And there was myself, Stephen Johansson, and who's the other guy? He'll come to me. So Stephen's quite a pleasant guy, but quite politely spoken. And all these guys, there's thousands and thousands of people on this platform, and I'm saying, God, he's not lifting the crowd, he's pretty cramped. Then the next guy came along, what was his name? He was a little bit more gestistic and all the rest, and then he came to me. And I said, oh my God, I said, guys, look, it's blue sky. I haven't seen this for the last 4 months. We don't get this in England this time of year. I said, the last time I seen my surgeon was back in 1991. He said in Martin, he says, you'll never drive an F1 car again in anger. I said, today, guess what? I drove an Irish A10B, so fuck you, Bram Roper. They all cheered and they clapped and all. It was good, you know. Got to lift your audience a little bit. Like tonight, I hope.
I know, Derek, you've been very reflective and you said that you haven't missed a car, but let's say Toto Wolff or Zach Brown or someone goes, come on, Derek, do a show run for us. Would you do it?
I have done track testing since I stopped racing. So the answer is probably yes, for curiosity. I would never race a Formula One car again. But when I was doing television, we were detailed to cover Michael Andretti when he was Senna's teammate at McLaren. So we would go to all the races. And during that year was when the Williams FW14B, I think it is, the one that the car that got banned, the all-active car, the Williams that got banned by the FIA. And I was with Frank Williams. I said, before you mothball this thing, I'd love to have a run in it. He said, let me talk to Patrick Head. Now, Patrick Head was no fan of mine, so I thought, well, that's the last I'll hear of that. 6 weeks later, I got a call from Annie Bradshaw, the PR of Williams. If you want to drive this thing, meet us at Paul Ricard in the middle of November. I get there, and John Watson is there, Jean-Pierre Geria, Jochen Mass, Jacques Lafitte, Adrian Newey, and Patrick Head, all there to drive the car. So my casual comment to Frank turned out to be a PR exercise. Before the car was put into the museum, they could get global television coverage with all the ex-F1 drivers. So that prompted me that maybe I'll do one a year. I didn't want to be a journalist as such, but maybe if I do one track test a year, it'll keep me current with racing cars, which will help my television broadcasting. And it just grew. I did championship winning Indy cars, I did stock cars, I did a Honda IndyCar versus the Mugen Honda Ligier at the time, all sorts of stuff. By the time I did it for 10 years, by the time I was finished, the stories that I wrote went to 17 countries in 12 different languages, all because of that casual comment to Frank Williams. Now here's the key to this though. David Coulthard was there. He was the test driver for Williams. He wasn't a Grand Prix driver at the time. He went out and did the bogey time, set the car's good, and set a lap time, and we then all drove the car after that. On my last run, I braked as late as I possibly could. I was told as soon as I turned the steering wheel, mash the throttle, and the traction control would take care of any wheel spin. And the Paul Ricard, the back straight seam corner at the end of it, trying to get it flat. I did everything I could to drive the shit out of the car. Coulthard was 2.4 seconds faster than me, and he only did 5 laps. And none of the ex-F1 drivers could go within 2 seconds of Coulthard, which tells me how sharp and good and brave the younger guys are. Time had moved on from us. And quite frankly, you know, you talk about racing a Formula One car. I've been asked many times would I race an 80s Formula One car. I wouldn't do it. Having been hurt as badly as I've been hurt, I would be afraid. I would be afraid to get some brave guy trying to outbrake Derek Daly in a Formula One car and get us all in trouble. And I just so it just wouldn't be worth it for me to take the chance.
What he's trying to say is he doesn't like hospital food anymore. So I've surprised myself recently because there's a Masters series called Masters, and I was asked to race at Paul Ricard last weekend, and I had work already booked in, so I didn't want to let them down. But there's a race of Masters at Brands Hatch last weekend of this month coming up, and you know I drove a Master race there at Brands Hatch, and that went wrong.
In what car?
Mazda MX-5.
Mazda. I thought you said Masters.
No.
Sorry,
it's
I can't understand you.
It's a shopping car. And then I was asked to race at Brands Hatch, and then back in the day at Monaco, I said yes. But then you start to think, we had a driver at Monaco whose car wasn't prepped right, as was prepped correctly, I should say, nor was mine, which caused the accident. The front suspension collapsed, and I'm thinking, if that happened to him in the tunnel at Monaco, either he'd be very hurt or the car be scrapped. And so all of a sudden I'm thinking what my old surgeon said to me this morning. He said, there's more bone on a track in Jerez, he says, than there is in your left leg. He says, the leg is supported by metal struts and nuts and bolts and all the rest of it. And if you hurt your leg again, he says, we can't save it, we have to take it off. And I'm thinking, like your man here, do I have to go out and race against these idiots and put a target on your back for them to sort of dive bomb you into paddock or into trails? There's no worth the risk. So I said, look, what I'll do is I'll drive the car for the experience and sensation and do some demonstration laps, and that'll be it. So maybe Martin Donnelly is starting to get more common sense at the age of 55.
So, speaking of these young, late-breaking idiots, what do you think of the young Irish guys coming through? You met a few of them in Mondello, the likes of Alex Dunn, Alex O'Grady, Phil McLaughlin. What do you think of them coming through?
Well, I think we all have high hopes that one of them's going to get to F1. Alex Dunn is ahead of the pack. I believe, from what I've seen, I've known him since he was 12. I did a driver development seminar at Mondello and he was 12, just a little short fella in go-karts at the time. He's improved immeasurably since then. He's got remarkable talent. I believe he's got the X factor. So there's a lot more than just going fast in a racing car. The X factor, part of the X factor that I saw in Alex Dunn is you can win in your own backyard, but when you take a driver out and drop him into a strange country on a strange racetrack, can you win there? And Alex Dunn could do that. I think he was arguably the best passer I'd seen in Formula 3. He had that Ricciardo feel on the brake pedal that he could, from a long distance, outbrake somebody and make a pass. That's X-Factor type stuff. And so I hated what happened last year, because last year at the start of the Formula 2 season, he was king of the hill. He got disqualified from his win at Spa because somebody didn't turn on a safety light or switch or something.
Yes.
And then he got disqualified from Imola because the plank underneath the car was worn too much.
And he got taken out twice by Lindblad at Monza and somewhere else. He went turned.
Yes, so he should have won the championship and had a super license last year, and you never know where it would be now. However, apart from two small mistakes that turned out to be big mistakes this year, I still think he is the guy that we're going to watch, that we're going to cheer for, that I hope will end up in F1 very soon.
Martin, any words of advice for the young drivers of the room?
Well, drive quick and don't crash. And Alex can definitely drive a car quickly. I mean, he has the talent, he's got the ability to take him there. But at this moment in time, the lady luck isn't riding with him, and you need the lady luck be in the right place at the right time. I don't know what's happening between McLaren and Red Bull. There's a deal done behind closed doors. Helmut Marko decided to walk away from Red Bull. That, I think, more or less collapsed. I still think he gets support from Red Bull on a contract. But you know, he's now, as I said, as Derek says, he's made a couple of mistakes. He's now in the back foot, I think, for the rest of the season. But if it's going to happen, he's the man who can make it happen. He's just got to avoid getting involved in other people's silly accidents, put the blinkers on, stay in his own garage, and just do what he's doing and drive the car quickly. And I do think he's capable of doing that. But sometimes your destiny's not your own control. Everyone is, as Ron Dennis said to Eddie Jordan, welcome to the Piranha Club. And if your face fits, you're in. If your face doesn't fit, you're not going to make it. But please God that you'll do us proud and represent our country to the best.
Just to wrap up then, a few quick fire questions for you both of stuff we didn't get to, but I'm sure you'll be here till all hours in the morning answering everyone else's questions. Best track you've ever driven on?
Österreich in Austria, the original one that was 3 times longer than the Red Bull ring today. You know why they cut all these tracks in half, Hockenheim in Austria? Is for television broadcasting. They had to run miles of television wires to wire all the cameras, and you only came by the start-finish line, let's say, 25 times. They wanted you to come by 50 times, so they cut the track in half and double the amount of laps. Pretty basic stuff.
For me, from my younger days, Mandela Park, definitely 110%. Good technical circuit where we all learned our racecraft in Formula Ford. And modern day terms, I'd have to say Spa-Francorchamps. You know, it's fast, it flows. You got pomfrets and mayonnaise, good beer, and allegedly good beer. It's great. You get a great buzz from Spa.
In the car with you?
I'm sure there's been some who have. Best track you've never driven? Yes, there is a correct answer to this one. Bishopscourt.
Bishopscourt.
Best car you've ever driven, whether it be race car or road car?
Chevron B42 Formula 2 car, by far. It was one of those racing cars where you drove the shit out of it and it went faster the harder you drove it. Nowadays, racing cars, you drive them hard, you get them sideways, they go slow. But this was one of the era where you drive the shit out of this thing and you get rewarded with lap time. Loved it.
Castrol Jaguar at Daytona, I think it was 89 or 90. It's a lovely car, nice big V12 engine. And my first car in 2000, the Q8 Renard, you know, we just gelled. Should have made an extra horsepower, extra grip, and new pants as well. And we, from there, when EJ wanted his money, I told him I'd get it from a sponsor, Frank Nolan, who died, no will, and fleeced him.
Common theme here. Who's going to win the Formula 1 championship this year?
You over there, you have the experience.
George Russell.
Good to see George has a nice reputation.
Lando Norris.
I think George Russell comes back. I think his experience pays dividends. I think he's had a bad run. And I bet $1,000 on him before the start of the season.
I think he's psychologically on his back foot. I think Kimi, 3 poles, 3 wins. If he wins next weekend in, where are we going next weekend? Montreal. You know, psychologically, I mean, when a driver's head drops, be it F1 or whatever sport you're in, it can be the hardest thing in the world to pick that chin back up again. You know, mentally, psychologically, and that's a big part of our sport.
Last question, most important. Who's a better driver, Derek Daly or Martin Donnelly?
Oh, no doubt. My book says it.
Yeah, but Derek hasn't enough books to sign. I've got cards here to sign.
Folks, please give a round of applause for 2 minutes.